This is Michael Popok, Legal AF After Dark. Lawyers talking about politics and law at the intersection who know what they're talking about. What am I talking about? Legal AF, the show, the podcast on the MeidasTouch network. And we just did a show midweek with my co-anchor, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, where we talked about what is going on in Nevada with the electors, fake electors now being indicted. Who among the former Trump lawyers likely cooperated with the grand jury, testified before the grand jury to get that indictment? And what is happening with the Colorado Supreme Court in their oral argument about trying to make a decision as to whether the 14th Amendment of the Constitution disqualifies Donald Trump from being on the ballot? We do it all on this past edition of Legal AF, but here's a clip. Let's turn our attention on that one. Let's turn our attention now to breaking news today in Nevada. A lot of states, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, the battleground states are looking, not Florida because of its governor, are looking at the fake electors and whether they were criminally liable for impersonating real electors and other things that are on the statute books for individual states. Because if they thought they were going to get away with it, just participate in the conspiracy that's at the heart of at least two criminal indictments, one in Georgia and one in the District of Columbia, they got another thing coming. And so it took a long time. I think many of these attorney generals that are now handling these cases, that are going after them, waited to see what Jack Smith would do, what the Jan 6 committee would do, what Fani Willis would do. And then when the dust settled, they're finally getting around in 2023, late in 2023, to get their indictments. Now, the advantage to waiting is a lot of the work has been done for them. A lot of the heavy lifting has been done for them by Fani Willis and Jack Smith in their indictments and in the witnesses that have been disclosed. For instance, one of the reasons I'm sure that Nevada grand jury indicted all of these members of the GOP in Nevada for being fake electors is because Ken Chesebro, the now felon former Trump lawyer, architect with John Eastman of the fake elector scheme, got permission 10 days ago to go to Georgia, to go from Georgia, leave Georgia and the conditions of his release and go to states like Arizona and Nevada to cooperate, and DC. They were listed by name. And then, lo and behold, there's a grand jury in Nevada right after Ken Chesebro visits that indicts those GOP members. Tell us what you know about the indictments there, and then we can touch on Colorado at the as we end the podcast.
Yeah, well, big news coming out of Nevada, right? The Attorney General Aaron Ford announced that 6 Nevadans. I know you say Nevada. I'm from California, and in California we say Nevada. Or at least I grew up saying Nevada, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are cringing right now, but that's how I learned it. Anyway, that they falsely represented themselves as state electors in 2020. And, look, just to remind everyone, there was Republicans in 7 different states, right? Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, who hatched the fake elector scheme and pretended to be the duly elected and qualified electors, right? And then these documents were sent to the United States Senate as well as the archivist, and it was done as if they were the legitimate electors. And Michigan and Georgia have already filed criminal charges because of this scheme. Fani Willis in Georgia did the big sweeping RICO case that, in addition to charging some electors, charged the lawyers, charged Trump and others in the scheme. There were 19 total. And in Michigan, the attorney general there only indicted the fake electors. They didn't go up the food chain, if you will. And Nevada seems to have followed Michigan's lead and indicted 6 Republican fake electors, including the chairman of the RNC in that state. And, each person was charged with 2 felony charges. I think they carry a max of 5. One is 5 years, the other is 4 years. The charges are offering a false instrument for filing and uttering a forged instrument by submitting fraudulent documents to state and and federal officials. So that's when they submitted the fake electors, the slates, to the archives and to the Senate. And, the Attorney General opened this investigation a mere few weeks ago, despite previously saying they were unlikely to do so because of the fact that Chesebro is cooperating and has made the difference. So this is huge, that they're going to be held accountable, and that is that's happening now. When this came down, and in preparation for the podcast, I went back to the Jack Smith indictment just to remind myself what the allegations are in Nevada. And Jack Smith goes state by state. There's a whole section on the states and the fake electors, and he goes in alphabetical order. Arizona and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, whatever. It's in alphabetical order, but there's no Nevada in there, which I thought was very strange, because why isn't there a separate section for Nevada? But it is mentioned in the indictment. It's just not a separate section. Anyway, so it's just interesting to me that the conduct there perhaps is not quite as egregious as in other states, or maybe that Trump wasn't as involved there as he was in the other states. Who knows? But there's clearly a case. It was clearly part of the common, part of the scheme, the plan, given the fact that Chesebro was able to provide this information and this testimony that was the key to being able to indict this case. So I think, there's other investigations in other states going on as well. I think Arizona has an open investigation, and there's rumblings that's same with other states. So finally, people are starting to be held accountable for this scheme. And, just again, to remind everybody, the defense here is going to be, we were allowed to do this. In fact, there's precedent for it in the 60s in the Kennedy election in Hawaii. It was so close that Kennedy's people put together a just-in-case slate of electors, if you will, in case it turns out when they actually recount the votes, he wins. They didn't submit them as the actual electors, though. They just had them there just in case he won. And in fact, he did win. And so they ended up using those electors. So they actually turned out to be the real electors. So it's just a matter, but so that doesn't mean you can lie and put in a fake slate of electors, because these weren't just in case electors. These were actually being held out as the legitimate electors in an effort to try to steal the election from Biden.
Yeah, Nixon and Hawaii and Kennedy are apples and oranges. They first called the state for Nixon, and there were electors that stepped up. They then recounted and called the state properly for Kennedy, which helped put him over the top. And then those electors, that's different than certifying that your electors are the real electors, sending them to the National Archive, the judge of your state, and to Mike Pence to try to get them to be recognized as the real electors. That didn't happen. They love that Nixon versus Kennedy case, except they totally distort it and misstate it, which is easily pointed out. And we're going to watch, we're probably not going to cover it too much in detail today because we want to really read through it. But Colorado is holding oral argument at the Supreme Court level in Colorado about whether the 14th Amendment, Section 3, applies to Donald Trump as president. Really the sole issue for them on appeal, because it's the only issue that the trial judge, we think, got wrong, is that the 14th Amendment, Section 3, doesn't apply to a former president. Everything else she found, the engagement in insurrection and rebellion against the Constitution, she found all that as a matter of fact in her fact finding, but then sort of fumbled, we think, on the interpretation of legislative history and what the framers wanted about the 14th Amendment in the Reconstruction period after the Civil War, in which there were lots of loyalty tests baked into different statutes as the Union tried to be reconstructed, put back together again after the Civil War. And so the question is, was Jefferson Davis able to run for office after having left the Union and become the first president of the Confederacy? Would it have applied to him or not? There's a lot of debate, literally legislative debate at the time, about its application to a rebel like Jeff Davis. And that all applies here. the Supreme Court were getting the reports of the oral argument is I think they understand they got to make this decision before this particular election. But there still seems to be a debate in the oral argument that's just wrong about what is the insurrection or rebellion. Because I can tell from some of the questions and answers that are being given that they're still focusing on Jan 6th and were they armed? Weren't they armed? Did he control them? I'm talking about the people that attacked the Capitol, the more than 2,000 people. That is not the insurrection or rebellion for the 14th Amendment analysis. And everybody who's a constitutional scholar and everybody that's looked at the issue, like Michael Luttig, the former federal judge and Federalist Society Lion, has said that. Just read the provision. It's an insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution. And the Constitution was rebelled against and by Donald Trump when he refused to the peaceful transfer of power, not when he participated in one way or the other in giving the command to attack the Capitol. That's different. But it looks like they're still kind of running through some confusing dialogue at the Colorado Supreme Court level. But we'll report on that more in some hot takes. Ben and I'll pick it up on this on the weekend edition of Legal. You like that kind of debate and analysis? You like being brought up to speed about these important issues at the intersection of law, politics, and justice? You're going to love Legal AF. We do it twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m., and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice, every one of them. If you liked it, you know about us, welcome back. We appreciate you. If you have no idea what I'm talking about or what show Legal AF is, I'm Michael Popok. That was Legal AF. And try to join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the MeidasTouch Network and get all caught up. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.